Okay, so just in order, because I'm sure that your presentation will be full of insights. I will not introduce you with this speaker's biography, and please let me allow me to give the floor to your presentation.
Ah, clever.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Florin, for that. So let me just share my screen for a change.
Yep.
Without much ado. Hold on a minute, because I need to remember to do several operations before that. You just please. Oh, sorry, this is not the thing yet. Could you? Can you see it?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Okay, you can make it full screen now.
That's full screen. I can't see anyone, so if you need to interrupt me for some reason.
We are here. We are communicating from time to time that we
All
are
right.
here.
All right. Thank you very much. So I have the pleasure to begin the first panelist session with the title, as you can see on the screen. I'm going to talk about a Polish vampire film, which is a very rare thing. If you're not Polish, maybe you don't know this. If you are Polish or know anything about our culture, it's a rare thing. And horror is a very rare thing in Polish cinema as well. I need to ask someone who's not muted to mute their microphones, because I can hear a lot of noise. Thank you very much. Right, so first of all, if you look at my title, which is Patchwork Gothic, I thought about such a term while I was thinking about the Lullaby. This is the film that the Polish film I'm talking about, and I devoted most of the year to researching this title. The film was made in 2010, so it's not very new, but it's 21st century. And as I say, this is a rare example of vampire film in Poland. And looking at it from various perspectives, you cannot call it anything different but a patchwork Gothic, a mix of all sorts of elements, like classic cinema, Hollywood cinema from the very start, and Gothic elements are also very far from Slavonic culture. And when I thought about this name, I typed Patchwork Gothic into the search engine, and it obviously turned up that I'm not the first one to to think about such a term, which is a pity, by the way. But someone from Lancaster, I think, from University in Lancaster, used this very term, Patchwork Gothic, before me, in relation to Gothic fiction in general. So they are arguing that Gothic as a genre is already a patchwork of medieval and historical romance, with the novel of menace, supernatural, some crime stories, some sensational stories. So in this sense, it was presented. As also, they are referring to Horace Walpole, so the author of The Castle of Otranto, 1764, and probably the guy from whom everything, Gothic literature began. And this patchwork Gothic was used to in relation to Strawberry Hills. Which is his mansion near London, built in a very Gothic style, and which gives people a lot to think about. to many people. Right, so this is it. So I explained the title, and now I'm going to just point out that Juliusz Machulski's The Lullaby is also a comedy horror. And first of all, before I go any further and explain about Polish horror in general and the film later on, just let me stop for a moment on this phenomenon of comedy horror, which is quite a popular genre nowadays, but it's a very curious phenomenon when you think about it. So at the first glance, the connection between the genres of horror and comedy can be as perplexing as the relation between horror and humor. Nevertheless, following the reflection of Noel Carroll, although, and I'm going to quote, being horrified seems as though it should preclude amusement, there is some intimate relation of affinity between horror and humor. The above statement can be also supported by Francis Hadjion's incongruity theory, stating that an essential ingredient of comic amusement is the juxtaposition of incongruous or contradicting objects, so events, categories, propositions, maxims, characters, and so on. Then I can propose that the defining element of horror genre is the presence of fearful and loathsome monster for the sake of evoking laughter. The monster has to be deprived of his fearful properties, and in other words, horror can only turn into comedy or farce when the nature of terror is disturbed in such a way that results in an amusing effect. So hence this incongruity theory and making something that used to be horrifying funny. And so at some point the term comedy horror was dubbed in cinema, and it started very soon, to be honest, even in the pre-war pre-Second World War time. But after the Second World War, it's really clearly visible when the pre-war era from the start aimed at deconstructing the ethos of terror and dread. For instance, not to look very far, we can see these examples. So Abbott and Costello and their series of adventures where they meet all the classic Hollywood horror characters like Dracula, like the Wolfman, the Frankenstein, very often played by the same characters who were starring in the original films. So this is something, the phenomenon started and it stays with us till this day. So we have these laughter-evoking tricks aiming at familiarizing and ridiculing of the well-known and once fearsome characters, laughing at the cliches, simply. And just a moment, I'm going to stop at this slide for a moment. This is by no means this is all we have, but we don't have many more Polish horror films. So yeah, we started from early on, from some films that mention or propose some horror elements. So they are Charlotte's Mistress is not a horror as such, but we have some elements in it. Then we have probably one of the most famous films, which was made in the pre-war time in Yiddish. So Israel is taking care of prolonging its legacy, and it's Dibuk, and it's referring to some Jewish folklore, but it was filmed right behind the corner where I am here in Poland. And then in the 60s and 80s, such a thing like TV theater started. So we're talking about TV medium here. But every week we would have a theater being produced, performed live on TV, and some of these were filmed. For instance, The Vampire, which is based on Tolstoy stories, or Canterville Ghost, which most of you are probably familiar with, or Carmilla. So we have our Polish version of Carmilla. It's an hour-long TV production, black and white, with some very interesting, very well-known Polish actors of this time, and with some 80s music. You wouldn't believe what they've done with it, but it is exciting. Sadly, I've never found a translation, English translation, so maybe I should do it to be able to show it to the world. But then the contemporary cinema is in the horror genre appears more often. We have films like you can see the titles. Just let me stop on two things. I Like Bats, which is a vampire story in 1985, and the Lullaby, the film I'm going to discuss in a moment. Now, okay, every one of you probably is aware of this film, for which unfortunately we probably cannot claim credit because it's an American production, but still it's Roman Polanski, so we have our Polish director here. Yeah, but apart from that, let's get back to Polish playgrounds, and we have I Like Bats. As you can see, this is very 80s. It was it's probably now it's mostly forgotten, but if you dig deep, you can see at least the trailer on YouTube. And as I said, it's very 80s in proposed themes and stylistics as well. That was the time when, at long last, eroticism could be discussed or shown on TV or in cinema. So yeah, the producers jumped into it, and we have this wonderful production. Wonderful production. Which is I Like Bats. And now on to Lullaby. So Juliusz Machulski is a very well-known director. He's still making films, but he's mostly connected to comedies. So he's known for comedies, and he's been criticizing Polish society, Polish political system in this guise of comedies and farces for as long as we can remember, as long as he was around. And the Lullaby is not an example here. If you have a look at this slide I'm showing you now, you can right away see why I thought about Patchwork, because obviously some of these characters can seem familiar to you. And let me just tell you a little bit about the plot. It's the story of the family of vampires who are three generations of vampires. There is a grandpa, there is his son and his wife and kids. So again, very post-millennial approach to the vampire theme. And they move into a small village by Mazurian village, which is a lake district in Poland, in search of jobs, in search of just stability and making something for themselves. And very soon, as you can imagine, people from the vicinity or the visitors start disappearing in mysterious circumstances. So something is afoot. And you can probably guess what's happening in the film. Let me just move on. There is another shot from the film itself, so it's not even the promotion. Still, it's a shot from the film. So talking about Patchwork and various characters, let me start with the scenery, so you can right away see this reference, very strong reference to the classic themes, classic mise-en-scene, costumes as well. At least at night, because they dress up in the traditional Western style at night, whereas during the day they are trying to blend in the society. They are day walkers, as is quite common in the 21st century. But you can see that this is as Gothic as can be. This poster shows it, and then the makeup as well. So we have all full moons, night times, hooting owls, wolves howling in the distance, and so on. So this is definitely a Gothic film, a classic Gothic film, let's say, set in the very contemporary Polish setting, which, believe me, has nothing to do with Gothicism. So a Polish village is as far from Gothic imagination as you can imagine. One of the critics even commented that this film can only be viewed and is only valuable as much as it borrows, reinterprets, and recalls from Hollywood's horror tradition. So basically, it is a praise and not so much of a praise in one, because it definitely refers to classics, but at the same time, it is very Polish. And let's have a look at the characters. Right. Just as we have in Twilight, let me mention this unmentionable title. But yeah, this is a very similar scenario in that case, that they are, as I said, living in a small village in the middle of it. They work. In fact, they look for work. They are trying to sell some crafts work, like little figures they can sell for Easter. So they are trying to assimilate to a normal, everyday rural country life in Poland. But at the same time, they have to eat. And yes, you guessed, they eat, and their food habits are very traditional. So they need blood, and that's why all the kidnaps of all the characters that appear one by one in the story. Well, how they come about it without being noticed for a long time is we need someone to mute their microphones again, please. So they kidnap the characters, the visitors. They don't kill them, so they are very humane in this way. But they keep them in a shed nearby, together with the cars and any belongings that they came with, and use the tube inserted to their veins to be able to drain them of their blood. And actually, they are feeding their victims for them to be able to produce food as long as possible. Apart from that, they have their pale faces. Again, I just couldn't stop myself from doing this, because if you look at the grandpa, he's very, even if it's not a direct copy, it's very close to Nosferatu. So again, a homage to the tradition. Then another shot of the grandpa during the daylight, as you can see. And now let's have a look at the son, Michał, sporting his Bela Lugosi cape most of the time, and his famous stairs as well. So what is it if not quoting Todd Browning's movie? And if we move on to Bożena, who's the mother of the children, it's probably very hard to guess which one of the female characters from the films that we know and Simon discussed a moment ago she resembles. But what came to my mind was Eva from Only Lovers Left Alive by Jim Jarmusch, not because they resemble each other, but it's the proclivity and interest in art, and she sits down every night to play music and classical music, and makes the whole family to do the same. So this is quite interesting, and during the daylight she takes care of her family. You can see her performing some daily duties like cutting wood or making sure that the priest who's lying here doesn't escape because they need his blood and so on. So she's an everyday woman, contemporary woman, taking care of her family as well. And again, back to the nighttime, and the nighttime is the time when they gather to dance together, to play music together, to look as Gothic as you can imagine together as well. So it's a little bit like a gathering of vampire motley crew from What We Do in the Shadows, if you look at this picture. Again, the quotation from many very popular Gothic films. And then the question of, before we go there, we have, of course, then another aspect is children in this film, and the motive of children, which also very often appears in vampire productions, and they are usually very creepy, and it's and we can accept easily that there are grown-ups being vampires, but when it comes to children it's a different story, and there is something in psychology of our understanding of the world about it. But here you have your three kids who are growing up in a vampire family, and they're vampires themselves as well. And even though they don't do anything creepy yet, apart from the normal thing, yeah, I think that they are capable of scaring us to death just by watching them. There is a question of one of the sons asks at some points. So some existential problems appear, and one of the kids asks if he really is the son of the devil, because one of the victims told him that he's a son of the devil. So he is very, very moved by it, and demands an explanation from his father about it. But again, let's go on because I'm running out of time. And I wanted to go through possible interpretations of the whole film. Without going into details, it is a dark black comedy. It is a comedy horror, but at the same time, it's a criticism of Poland's politics. It's a criticism of Poland's social life. So Machulski did it again. So under the disguise of a light film entertainment, he is aiming at various situations, and you can see it even in the choice of the victim. So again, among the victims, you can have a policeman, you have a priest, a social worker, some journalists, and there is one German person, a random German tourist who came to purchase land in the vicinity. And that's, if you know anything about Polish situation and history, it is very, very, very telling. So when they at the end of the film, they release all the victims, and there is this scene that this particular shot is about, and everyone is dancing. There is this motif of dance macabre. The whole village is dancing, all the victims are dancing, and the vampires are dancing to some very scary, creepy, weird music. Again, it can be treated as a metaphor of dancing to forget. This is a kind of they are trying to mesmerize the audience and make them forget about everything that's around, and everything that happens to them. If you remember various political interpretations of vampire films, and obviously vampire figure was very often treated as a metaphor of bad political situation. Siegfried Krakauer, he was writing about Nosferatu, a German expression. He compared Nosferatu to the situation at that time, so the raising of Hitlerism and all the atrocities that will happen later on during the war. So this is probably, we can go a similar route in trying to interpret this final dance macabre of the vampires in the Polish village as a way to avert the attention from everything that is happening on the political scene and on social scene, basically. The very final scene shows the whole family of vampires. They had to move because of the situation got very dangerous for them. Namely, people started looking for the victims, and they had to move, and they ended up in Warsaw in the presidential palace. So they arrived there saying, yeah, this will do. So they move into the presidential palace, and we can read this right away as a kind of a comment again, but also the question is asked, yeah, it's a nice house, but what are we going to do here? What are we going to live on? A very, very Polish question indeed. So Polish people are forever looking for work, for jobs. It's something that never changed, even with the change of the system. So here we have our vampires in the presidential palace, which is probably not good news for us, or maybe it is, I don't know. Anyway, so if you look at this and the film as a patchwork Gothic, this is definitely post-millennial film, and you have legacy of Hollywood genre, of classical Gothic genre, just brought to the Polish village, contemporary village. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Magda. And now I kindly ask the audience if they have questions. Oh, let me see if they are. If not, I have one. Yes, because I'm prepared with this question for you. So can you tell me, can you tell us something about the reactions in the media? For example, are some critics more vocal just because a very important part of Polish society have very strong Catholic feelings? So I'm curious about if there are some critics or some reactions, so we don't need vampires and so on, but it's
yes, this is an interesting question, and indeed I can answer that because it's Juliusz Machulski, who, as I said, is known mostly for his comedies, and he's always criticizing everything around in the society and politics here, and in a comical way as well. First of all, when it came out, it wasn't understood because it's as I say, it's a vampire film, and Polish people are not really used to it, and then some of the criticisms that came were quite negative. Not because it's a vampire theme, but it's they just didn't understand why and what's it all about, why they look so weird, why they are not nice and Polish and Slovenic creatures and and so on. So it was unnoticed mostly. And it's still treated as one of the worst film by Machulski, which is I cannot agree with this at all because it's a great film. It's especially when you understand that he refers to so much of legacy, of Gothic legacy.
Okay, thank you. Because also I have my version of your answer, because recently, 1 month ago, actually, I was in Poland, in Krakow, and at the Pontifical University of John Paul II. So yeah. University linked with a double subordination. One is subordinate to the Vatican, and some professor from there, you are from Transylvania, you're coming from Dracula, you are our student. If they will come, we want to visit the Dracula castle. So at least from my perspective, they seem very relaxed with this subject, that being aware is part of the pop culture and so on.
Definitely, yes. It's I think that nobody treated him seriously in the first place, so it was too comical to be treated seriously. Our government didn't notice.
Okay.
Marius, you wanted to ask something?
Yes. First of all, congratulations, Magda, and a short question about the connection between the Polish vampire films and Polish history. Do you see a connection, or how is this connection perceived?
You may can you? I don't know if I understand.
Yes, I mean in Romania, for instance, the vampire is connected with the medieval history of.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah,
Transylvania and of Wallachia, of course. And my question would be, what about Poland? Is there a connection between the vampire myth and Polish history, or
It's rather the question of, not, I think in my head, it's rather about the question of Polish folklore, maybe, because we don't have as spectacular history as you do with Vlad the Impaler and Dracula. But we do have vampires indeed in our folklore. It is part of Slovenic folklore as well. But I think that unless you're specializing in this subject, what comes to Polish person minds when they hear the word vampire is rather Dracula, is Vlad the Impaler. So we're going your way rather than focusing on Slavonic culture. I think cinema is to thank for it.
Actually, it's the universal way, because that Dracula is not our Dracula.
Yeah.
Universal Dracula, yes.
I've been corrected so many times, but we don't believe you anyway.
It's our Dracula. It belongs to the whole world, that Dracula. It's not a Transylvanian invention. So we should be modest and say that it's a universal concept.
And that is true. Thank you, Marius.
Thank you so much, and congratulations, Magda.
Thanks a lot. We're running out of time, so one more. Oh, Nina, a Polish person. Yes, I'm in trouble.
No, I just want to answer Marius, if it's possible, because he asked about vampires in Poland. So apart from the folklore, we have a really important myth about the vampires, which is in our Romanticism literature wave. For example, the most important Romantic writer, Adam Mickiewicz, thought that the Slavonian race has the monopoly for the vampires. It was his idea, and he was putting everywhere where he could the vampire figure. So it is also important, it is also rooted in our literature history, as well as we have this mythos of a patriotic vampire, which is also important and very curious, I think. And that's all, I'm sorry.
Indeed, yes, you can talk from many perspectives, but
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay.